Imagens da boa vida, a torturante promessa do sonho americano, bem à mão, para todos que possam comprar.
The real part of the book is what happens to people who have big dreams, but having them run into the limits of American society.
A visão do que poderemos nos tornar é uma dança nos olhos da mente. Esta demanda nos traz de volta à terra para a corrida de ratos por sucesso e riqueza.
In America, we're all caught between hope and disillusion. We all believe we're all disillusioned.
A história de um homem cuja esperança jamais esmoreceu tornou-se uma lenda norte-americana. F. Scott Fitzgerald transformou um anfitrião da era do jazz em herói. O Grande Gatsby. Grandes livros. A história de Jay Gatsby começa no verão em 1922, numa praia de Long Island. Gatsby montou uma casa na cidade de West Egg, a maior casa que pôde encontrar. Ele veio para conquistar o amor de uma mulher, Daisy Faye Buchanan, que vive do outro lado da baía, com um farol verde no final do cais.
Ele estendeu os braços em direção à água turva de um jeito curioso. Mesmo estando longe, poderia jurar que ele tremia.
I think the first thing it's about is a man who tries to create himself, to invent himself through his imagination. Gatsby simply is dissatisfied with who he is as an individual, where he comes from, and he begins to intuit that there's a larger life out there, a more elegant life. So he begins to invent himself along those lines. And I think it's this that Nick Carraway sees and admires, that is the effort and the dedication that he has brought to creating himself.
Nick Carraway, jovem corretor de apólices e vizinho de Gatsby, é o narrador desta história.
Havia esperança, uma vivacidade romântica que jamais encontrarei novamente em nenhuma outra pessoa.
But there is something very touching about the notion that you can go from rags to riches. And that's something that happens to Gatsby in this book. He literally comes out of Nowhereville in the Midwest, and by the time we meet him in the story, he has this fabulous house that's kind of like a Disney castle on Long Island, full of wonderful objects and mesmerizing friends. There was that strong sense in Gatsby of a dedication to an ideal self that he could make of himself.
Gatsby é misterioso. Há rumores de conexões com quadrilhas, contrabando de bebidas.
The air of mystery that is around Gatsby is one of the things that makes the novel quite wonderful. And if you knew more specifically about him, I think it would ruin it in a way, because it's his dream that is important.
Gatsby promove enormes festas em sua casa, convidando os ricos e famosos. O estilo Gatsby, esbanjamento em alta escala, é criado para seduzir Daisy. E nos seduziu a todos, por certo. O Grande Gatsby definiu uma era, os exuberantes anos 20, quando os Estados Unidos pensaram que os bons tempos e a folia não acabariam nunca. E por 8 décadas, Gatsby tornou-se uma parte de nós, uma peça de nossa cultura. Os filmes tornaram-no um astro, com várias adaptações para o cinema. Warner Baxter foi o primeiro a interpretar Gatsby em 1926. Alan Ladd honrou a tradição 23 anos depois, no filme em 1949. Robert Montgomery apresentou Gatsby na televisão em 1955. O mesmo fez Robert Ryan no Playhouse 90 em 1958. Em 1974, Robert Redford interpretou o Grande Gatsby, coadjuvado por Sam Waterston como Nick Carraway.
It was the first big movie I was ever in, and it was a really big movie. Hundreds and hundreds of extras and everybody wearing costumes of the period from collections, you know. They recruited a lot of socialites from Newport who, just like the people at the party, stayed until they were tired of it and then went home without regard for whether the filming was over with or not. And leaving bits of Dior and Chanel on the grass as they toddled off. So there was real crossover between real life and the fantasy world.
A propaganda tem usado Gatsby para nos convencer de que nossas fantasias podem tornar-se uma realidade. Até mesmo uma ópera está sendo montada baseada em O Grande Gatsby.
I first read it when I was 16. I remember finishing it, and the world just blew up, you know? It was this great meadow of opportunity, paradise waiting out there when you read The Great Gatsby.
O mundo do Grande Gatsby nos anos 20 foi certamente uma época em que os Estados Unidos pareciam repletos de oportunidades.
We have to think about the 20s as being a very special period. What made it special was the fact that after the war, suddenly life became terribly prosperous. There was a crazy stock market which went up and up and up. And most of all, there was an urbanizing, people flocking to the big cities. And then there was prohibition, which in New York was a joke, and everybody was drinking more than ever before. Most of all, there was the idea that Americans had become more, quote, glamorous. It had to do with the sheer joy of living, because people felt this was going to be America forever and ever.
Americans at this point in time, and certainly in Gatsby's point in time, were interested in projecting their personality through the things they owned. And in a sense, Gatsby manufactures a personality by the things he chooses. And we do that all the time. We just don't like to confess we do it. We manufacture a personality by the clothes we choose to wear and where we choose to buy them. Those are all expressions of who we are.
Ele é veterano vindo da Primeira Guerra Mundial.
Here's Gatsby, who has a very big career in the army. He comes out a major and all the rest of it. But his real life is wanting to get back the girl he knew briefly before he went overseas, Daisy. And what happens? Daisy has married an awful rich man, Tom Buchanan.
Tom bulges with muscles. He embodies power. And people who cross him usually suffer for it.
Os Buchanas e seus amigos, tais como Jordan Baker, são um tipo de ricaços diferentes de Gatsby. Eles são antiga geração. Este é um mundo de privilégios e prazer ocioso.
We ought to plan something. All right. What do we plan?
Nick Carraway é primo de Daisy Buchanan, mas ele, assim como o vizinho Gatsby, é um estranho no mundo dos Buchanans. Ele trabalha para viver.
The story is told by Nick Carraway, who is not Fitzgerald, but is the person Fitzgerald wanted to be. Sardonic, quiet, very much a guy who stands in the background watching.
Todos duvidam das virtudes cardeais e eu sou um deles. Eu sou uma das poucas pessoas honestas que já conhecia.
It seems to me that he wanted to be a part of this very glamorous world. But there was something creepy about it for him, too, I think. But he was definitely attracted.
He's from the Middle West. That's very important. The Middle West was a place of innocence, where honesty reigned. The East in the book represents wealth, decadence, corruption, illegal sex, and all the rest of it.
Tom Buchanan incorpora o sistema do leste.
Tom Buchanan, who was so imperious and so rich and so haughty that he dominates things, and he's not ashamed to openly have a mistress.
Tom representa o sonho americano e é a saída de Myrtle Wilson para progredir na vida. Seu marido George cuida de um posto de gasolina na estrada a caminho de Nova York.
The book is about people who are from very, very highly stipulated social groups. Myrtle Wilson comes from labor, with a L. Tom Buchanan comes from capital, a great big C, maybe a couple of them if you can spell it that way. Daisy is a rich girl who's really never had to work a day in her life.
The Wilsons, of course, represent the failure to succeed in America, particularly George Wilson. He is the idealist who has come to New York in order to make a career for himself, and of course exactly the opposite has happened.
America is full of dreamers, and this story is full of people who have dreams. But society is also full of dead ends.
O posto de gasolina de Wilson nos arredores da cidade, está cercado de pilhas de ferro velho numa área chamada Vale das Cinzas.
It's a smoldering ruin of commercial society, but hanging over it are the eyes of Dr. T.J. Eckelberg, who's left behind this advertising sign, this billboard that in the book functions like a kind of eye of God, marking the place where the city stops and this pastoral green dream of Gatsby's rolling on into the future begins.
O significado do futuro seria repetir o passado, o amor que tinha por Daisy antes da guerra. Gatsby pede a Nick que planeje um encontro.
Gatsby, com as mãos no bolso, apoiado no consolo da lareira, fingia uma naturalidade até mesmo tédio. Sua cabeça se inclinava em direção ao relógio colocado acima. Dali ele tinha os olhos em Daisy, que estava sentada, assustada, mas cheia de graça, à beira de uma cadeira. Felizmente, o relógio caiu por cima de sua cabeça. Ele se virou e o segurou com os dedos trêmulos, colocando-o no lugar. Então se sentou, tenso, cotovelo apoiado no braço do sofá e a mão segurava o queixo.
The act of catching a falling clock, that clock wasn't there to tell you it's 11:37. It was there to tell you something about your relationship at the time.
Os anos nos quais Gatsby esteve longe de Daisy não fazem sentido. Ele crê que pode repetir o passado.
He just doesn't think that time exists. But of course, Gatsby is by no means freakish in his idea that time can be changed. Every American looks back to the past. Every American thinks he can change the past and go back to it and make the present as good as it was when he was a child.
You always have a green light that burns all night long at the end of your dock.
The green light means sort of infinite dreams, infinite possibility. But Fitzgerald, through Nick Carraway, is smart enough to point out that the green light, as soon as Gatsby meets Daisy, the green light no longer can exist for him as the symbol of an infinite possibility. It's just a green light now.
Provavelmente ele teria pensado que o grande significado daquela luz havia desaparecido para sempre.
And at that moment, the whole book starts to slide down. The tragedy is inevitable now because one thing after another, one dream, one memory after another will collapse for Gatsby and Daisy and for all the people kind of cheering them on.
To put it very simply, Fitzgerald was Gatsby. Gatsby is portrayed as a hick whose only moment of glory came when he came to New York. Fitzgerald really felt déclassé the way a Gatsby did.
Fitzgerald e Gatsby eram do meio oeste, nascido em St. Paul, Minnesota. Era filho de Edward Fitzgerald, um negociante de boa família, porém mal-sucedido, e Molly McKillan, filha de imigrantes católicos irlandeses.
If you go to St. Paul and you look at the houses in the area where he was born, you get a real insight into his background, because he was born on a street, Summit Avenue, where there are some of the most beautiful houses in St. Paul. And then you have the house where Fitzgerald was born in the middle of all of this great splendor. And you can see right there that he was, as he once put it, a pauper among millionaires. And he was always, all throughout his life, conscious of his position.
Ainda jovem, Fitzgerald começou a escrever e se emocionou com sua primeira publicação, impressa aos 13 anos de idade. A St. Paul Academy publicou sua história de mistérios no jornal da escola. Como Gatsby, Fitzgerald e Gatsby cultivavam ambições além do meio-oeste. Ele foi para o leste, primeiro a escola preparatória, depois a Universidade de Princeton.
Fitzgerald is trying to do in his own life what Gatsby tries to do. I mean, Fitzgerald early in his life had this romantic fling with a woman named Ginevra King, who was this beautiful, rich debutante from the Chicago area whom he met when he was home from college. And she was as unattainable for Fitzgerald as Daisy Buchanan is for Gatsby. I mean, Gatsby himself is an outsider trying to win the beautiful Daisy Buchanan, who is the consummate insider, and trying to make his way in the society of Tom and Daisy Buchanan where he really isn't wanted.
She's got an indiscreet voice. It's full of... Her voice is full of money.
At the beginning of the book, when he sees Daisy again, he has this wonderful sentence that her voice, which is so wonderful, it's a voice he caught perfectly, that come hither quality, which in our time Jackie Onassis perfected. She spoke in this low, quiet voice, making you, especially a gentleman, come closer and closer.
We haven't met for many years.
Era isso. Eu jamais havia entendido. Era muito dinheiro. Havia charme irresistível que envolvia a melodia, a música distante, num palácio de cristal, a filha do rei, a garota de ouro.
Outro modelo para Daisy era a linda e brilhante sulista Zelda Sayre. Fitzgerald a conheceu após ter saído de Princeton, rumo ao exército. Ele havia sido escalado para treinamento em Montgomery, Alabama.
Zelda was the prettiest girl in town, the most sought-after, flashiest, sexiest girl in town. And of course, that's exactly the kind of girl that Fitzgerald would go after, the one that everybody else wanted. Fitzgerald always had to have the top girl, and Zelda was the top girl.
Fitzgerald casou-se com Zelda em 1920, no mesmo ano da publicação da sua novela, Este Lado do Paraíso. Foi um grande sucesso. Scott e Zelda viviam em alto ritmo. Relatos de suas aventuras, como dançar na fonte, em frente ao Hotel Plaza de Nova York, fizeram deles uma lenda na época.
The Plaza Fountain always reminds one of Zelda and Scott dancing, throwing themselves into the fountain, doing transgressive things, as Gatsby could give parties that went on until all hours with strange people playing the piano and drunks in all the corners.
Right from the start, they had this image of being this fun-loving, high-living couple. They did become kind of the first celebrity couple. Fitzgerald kept scrapbooks, and his scrapbooks are filled with little gossip column tidbits about them. You know, they were at this club last night, and they were doing this night. And to some extent, I think the fascination with Fitzgerald that exists to today remains as a result of that kind of cult of excitement and celebrity, that aura that surrounds the Fitzgeralds.
Quando o Grande Gatsby foi publicado em 1925, o mundo de esplendor e de grande romance parecia ter saído da própria vida de Fitzgerald com Zelda.
Malcolm Cowley, who was a friend of Fitzgerald's and of course also one of the leading critics of the 20s, said that Fitzgerald was like a little boy who had brought the prettiest girl to the dance, because he always had to have the prettiest girl. But he was also like that little boy standing outside the dance, looking in at the dancers, wondering who had paid for the dance. I mean, he was both trying to become an insider and always aware of his outsider status.
O alto estilo de vida com Zelda estava pondo Fitzgerald em débito. Para pagar as contas, tinha que vender pequenas histórias para revistas como Saturday Evening Post, histórias que achava estarem aquém de seu talento. Quando entregou o manuscrito final de Gatsby, Fitzgerald escreveu a seu editor Max Perkins:
Caro Max, envio a você meu terceiro romance em capa separada, O Grande Gatsby. Creio que finalmente fiz algo em harmonia com o meu eu. Resta saber o quanto este eu é bom.
Atrás do glamour de Fitzgerald, símbolo da desinibida era do jazz, havia uma insegurança pessoal e traço de desespero.
I got fascinated with Fitzgerald because he was so much the spirit of that age himself, you know, leaping into the Plaza Fountain. And now I look at him and you see much more the terrible self-knowledge which he had very early on. It's all there in Gatsby. He knew what he was doing to himself. He was a bad drunk, bad drunk. I really don't think that you can understand Fitzgerald's works until you understand it through the lens of alcohol. It is the drug of possibility. Everything is possible. Fitzgerald saw so much of the world through that kind of first drink lens.
A imagem alegre e romântica da vida e casamento de Fitzgerald marcavam uma realidade mais dura. Enquanto Fitzgerald escrevia sobre o caso de Daisy Buchanan e Gatsby, Zelda mantinha um romance com um piloto aéreo naval na Riviera. Assim, pouco antes de Gatsby ser publicado, Fitzgerald escreveu a um amigo:
As maiores alegrias da minha vida são Zelda e a esperança de que meu livro seja bom. Zelda e eu algumas vezes brigamos por 4 dias, o que é sempre iniciado pela bebida. Apesar disso, ainda nos amamos e somos o único casal feliz que eu conheço.
Os Fitzgerald mudavam-se constantemente com sua filha Scotty, dos Estados Unidos à Europa e de volta. A condição mental de Zelda piorava.
She had a series of nervous breakdowns starting in about 1930 and really was never healthy thereafter. I mean, she was in and out of institutions. They lived together for short periods of time and then she would have another relapse and she would go to a clinic.
Zelda teve de ser internada permanentemente e as despesas de Fitzgerald aumentavam. Nos anos 30, ele foi rumo a Hollywood, no Oeste, tentar como escritor de cinema.
He wasn't a success in Hollywood in terms of, again, creatively. Somehow he was always rewritten to the extent that he wasn't given screen credit, but he was paid, and so he had made a lot of money. And that enabled him to pay Zelda's bills, to pay Scotty's tuition bills, to pay his debts to Scribner's and to his agent. He was very careful to pay off his debts. I mean, he was profligate, but he was always aware of how much money he owed. He didn't have very many debts when he died, if any.
He was a very moral man, and he lived a very moral life in spite of the fact that it was a disaster. But, you know, he paid his bills, and he sent his daughter to college, and he took care of his wife, and he wrote what he had to. And he left an insurance policy behind. Yeah, he was a very moral man.
Fitzgerald morreria de um ataque cardíaco em Hollywood em 1940, aos 44 anos de idade. No fim, manteve relacionamento com outra mulher, Sheila Graham, colunista social, mas jamais abandonou Zelda.
It was a tragic love affair, but it was a constant love affair. He never divorced her, and there was never even any question that he would divorce her. And they remained in some sort of beyond technical way true to one another. Even when they were most estranged, they still wrote very affectionate, nostalgic letters back and forth to each other.
Zelda, esta carta é extremamente fria e eu não sou frio em relação a você. Nós fomos um e de alguma maneira assim será.
Ecos da fé romântica de Fitzgerald ressoam pelas páginas de Gatsby. Fé que supera o tempo e a desilusão da vida.
The thing that makes it so remarkable is that Fitzgerald really believed in love. He really believed in being in love. I mean, it's something which is faithful, lasting, deep, profound. The book is not about sex, it's about love. That there's nothing like it in the world. Gatsby is often called the greatest novel of the 20s, I think it is. The Great Gatsby captured what is called the Jazz Age, and the Jazz Age was known for this air of infinite, everlasting merriment, you see. Everybody was going, you see.
Isso foi antes do craque da Bolsa de Valores, antes da Depressão e da Segunda Grande Guerra. A cidade de Nova York, onde Gatsby, Nick e Tom Buchanan ganharam dinheiro, crescia explosivamente sem temer o futuro.
He's portraying Manhattan as the captured dream. That's where the women are more exotic and more wonderful, where the men are richer. When he describes Fifth Avenue, for example, in the shopping districts, he makes it sound like the Arabian Nights.
America had changed to an age of consumption. Literally, there were sociologists and popular philosophers urging us to buy, buy, buy. It's like looking at baby pictures of this country that we have grown up with and that we still live in the late 90s.
Fitzgerald entendeu a era do consumidor porque trabalhou temporariamente em publicidade. Ele comentou sobre o negócio em uma carta à sua filha Scotty.
A propaganda é uma fraude, assim como o cinema e a corretagem. Os que são honestos admitem que a contribuição construtiva à humanidade é igual a menos zero. É simplesmente um veículo de promessas dúbias a um povo crédulo.
He was well aware of the power of advertising. Dr. T.J. Eckelberg's glasses, of course, reflect that, trying to suggest the blindness that is out there, and inability, really, to see clearly and how things get distorted. But someone like Myrtle Wilson is clearly a product of the new advertising.
I'm gonna make a list of all the things I've gotta get. A massage, and a wave, and a collar for the dog.
Consumidores da década de 20 estavam cercados por imagens de mídia, de revistas e de cinema.
The cult of celebrity is created in America at exactly the same time that F. Scott Fitzgerald is writing Gatsby. It's people like Mary Pickford, for example, and Douglas Fairbanks, who become overnight celebrities and whose doings are followed and whose clothing is copied and whose possessions become the envy of the world.
Nick Carraway vem visitar Gatsby, o contrabandista e traficante como um homem de honra verdadeira entre os ladrões.
Nick Carraway, his whole relationship to Jay Gatsby is only possible when you imagine that Nick is a wonderful, kind of grand bourgeois of the late 19th, early 20th century. He really believes in manners, he believes in toleration.
Nick pode ser um homem de princípios, mas sua moralidade é complexa, o que lhe permite apoiar o amor adúltero de Gatsby e Daisy.
In Nick's case, I didn't think he was a terrible person at all. The way I saw it, he acted nobly in very ambiguous circumstances. He arranges for Daisy to meet Gatsby, yes. But I took him at his word that he was the most honest person he knew.
Os personagens de O Grande Gatsby estão tentando escrever novas regras num tempo de transição de valores. Um jogo perigoso, porque a velha ordem ainda não se havia desmoronado.
It was a very class-stratified society. It was very difficult to move between classes. Old money meant more than new.
Os sonhos de Gatsby foram de encontro às diferentes classes da sociedade norte-americana.
He doesn't really make a distinction between his kind of money and Tom Buchanan's money. And this is going to, of course, lead to his downfall, because in the scene in the Plaza Hotel, when Tom Buchanan reveals where Gatsby's money is coming from, it's at that point, of course, that the dream is over, that his hope for Daisy is long gone.
Daisy's leaving you.
Nonsense.
I am, though.
She's not leaving me. Certainly not for a common swindler who'd have to steal the ring he put on her finger.
There's never any hope that Gatsby could really succeed. When you're 16 and you read it, you believe there is hope, that somehow he and Daisy could go off together. But no, it was impossible. That's why the book is a tragedy.
I won't stand this. Oh, please, Tom. Let's get out.
Tom Buchanan, brincando com sua vitória sobre Gatsby, chega a pedir Daisy que volte para casa no carro de Gatsby.
Go on, he won't annoy you. I think he realizes that his presumptuous little flirtation is over.
E eles saíram em silêncio, como num piscar de olhos, acidentalmente, distantes até da nossa compaixão.
We're supposed to believe that Gatsby is hopelessly forever and ever in love with Daisy. And then it turns out he will never get her back, that he's misunderstood who Daisy was. What she's in for is the big money. She can accept the fact that her husband is disloyal and all the rest of it, because everything that counts is money.
Gatsby becomes really a victim of not knowing a good deal about American culture, particularly the difference of the classes. Gatsby, I think, can be looked at as a kind of inverted Western. The young boy goes from the West to the East, meets the girl, gets involved in a shootout. In this case, it's at the Plaza Hotel with Tom Buchanan, and loses both the shootout and the girl.
Fitzgerald criou Gatsby à imagem dos Estados Unidos. Mas Gatsby também influenciou nossa vida e nossa literatura.
The first time I read The Great Gatsby was when I was quite a young teenager. And I read The Great Gatsby because I saw Robert Ryan being The Great Gatsby on TV. And the production mesmerized me. It absolutely grabbed me somewhere deep in the heart. And I was at the public library the next morning looking for a copy of The Great Gatsby.
E para muitos novelistas de hoje, escrevendo numa época bem diferente, O Grande Gatsby tem sido sempre mais do que apenas uma leitura obrigatória.
And I was a freshman at Princeton, and I remember sitting there that kind of wonderful summer, sitting under a tree reading that book, and how exciting it was for me. Opened up all kinds of things I'd never thought of.
I mean, it's absolutely casts its spell every time you pick it up. And you know, we're professionals. We get jaded. We read hundreds of books. Every time I pick this book up, it's as if I'm 17 years old again.
I think I took all the wrong things from the book. Like, I really wanted to be at those parties, right? I wanted to be in the middle of those parties, and I wanted to be drinking that champagne and getting to know those starlets.
Durante os 70 e poucos anos desde que foi publicado, o Grande Gatsby tornou-se tanto parte da cultura norte-americana, assim como seu criador.
Advertisers today will routinely use the term, let's Gatsby this, when you're talking to them. Gatsby would sell because it appeals to poshness on the one hand. If you acquire these objects, you will be posh and wonderful. You see the same kind of commercial connection if you look at contemporary clothiers, for example, who tend to show bureau drawers with hundreds and hundreds of beautiful shirts and ties spilling out of them.
Quando Gatsby exibe sua casa a Daisy, ele mostra suas gavetas cheias de belas camisas feitas sob medida.
The shirt scene is compelling to me because it's so tactile. We've all felt pleasure in the touch of things, and however abstract ideas may be, and maybe this is the most American thing of all, do we as Americans ever trust an idea or an ideology as opposed to trusting whatever it is that's the object of our heart's desire that we can tangibly hold on to? That, to me, is what's compelling about those shirts. We are a nation of shoppers. Gatsby is a shopper.
The novel is clearly universal. And the reason for the universality of this is that it kind of matches Western experience over the last century and a half. Everyone understands the idealism of becoming better, richer, better looking, more fortunate, more loved. And Fitzgerald knew people wanted a story in which there's a genuine striving to fulfill this really central idea of the West over the last century, becoming. All these other things, success, money, consumption, they're only reflections of that idea. They're not the idea.
Fitzgerald preocupava-se sobre como Gatsby seria entendido. Quando entregou o livro, ele escreveu a Max Perkins, seu editor.
Caro Max, você já deve ter recebido o romance. Há partes no meio do livro com as quais eu não estou satisfeito. Talvez reescreva os capítulos 6 e 7 com outro tom.
Fitzgerald estava inseguro até sobre o título.
Espero que tenha recebido meu telegrama. Os únicos títulos que parecem ser adequados são Trimalchio e On the Road to West Egg.
I can't imagine this book being called Trimalchio, which was another name after the classical great party giver, or Under the Red, White, and Blue, or Gold-Hatted Gatsby. I mean, somehow all those titles sound awful. But he did struggle with the title a great deal. He struggled with the book. Even in galleys, he was rewriting it up until the very end, and rearranging scenes and rewriting sections of it.
Na realidade, quando o Grande Gatsby foi lançado, sua recepção foi apenas morna.
Most reviewers missed the mythical dimension of the story. In other words, they thought it was the story of a bootlegger on Long Island falling in love with a rich girl.
When The Great Gatsby came out, it sold 20,000 copies. This is not a lot for an author who had achieved so much popularity with his first book about Princeton, This Side of Paradise, and had become a cult figure. Gatsby was a failure.
Just before he died, he wondered sadly why he couldn't buy his novels, and he thought they were out of print. Actually, they were in print. His work was in print. It just wasn't carried. It wasn't stocked by bookstores. Scribner had a warehouse full of his stuff.
Then people began to recognize after his death what was there, and in an extremely material age indeed, the 1950s, the book began to take off. And it started selling by the hundreds of thousands and continues to sell by the hundreds of thousands every year.
If he had only lived a little longer, he would have seen the paperback revolution, he would have seen TV, he would have seen movies making The Great Gatsby.
Quando estava começando a novela, Fitzgerald escreveu:
Quero escrever algo novo, extraordinário, belo e simples e exemplar.
The opening scene, when Nick Carraway goes over to the house for dinner, is one of the most beautiful things in American literature. Daisy is sitting on a sofa in a white dress, along with Jordan.
O único objeto imóvel na sala era o sofá enorme onde os dois estavam sentados, como balões de gás amarrados. Ambos estavam de branco. O tecido das roupas se movia lento e suave, como ao final de um voo.
The lines actually scan some time, the lines of prose. It's full of the most beautiful musical cadences. The language is its own music.
Myrtle Wilson tornava-se a primeira vítima dos ricaços descuidados.
Poor Myrtle, she suffers terribly at the hands of Buchanans. Don't forget, Tom smashes her nose earlier on in the book.
The violence of her death is very, very carefully laid into the text in such a way that you're not meant to miss just how violent the death is. That she's literally been torn open by this carelessness.
Quando Gatsby e Daisy vêm da cidade para casa, o carro de Gatsby atropela Myrtle Wilson e não para.
I think that one of the emotions that Fitzgerald brought to this novel, and he always said that he could never write unless he was writing out of a sense of his own emotion, is his own disappointment with what he called the cruel rich. And the novel tends to suggest that these are people who expect to get through life doing whatever they want to do with the license of their money.
I helped a friend deliver a yacht one time, and we sailed right past where Gatsby would have lived. We delivered the boat, then we had to catch a taxi cab back to Kennedy Airport. And we're chatting about how Gatsby would have lived here, and he would have seen this and that. And suddenly this cab driver says, "Oh yeah, Gatsby. Oh yeah. I used to live right over there by Great Neck, and geez, parties. Incredible. I had an uncle who used to work as a waiter over there at those parties. That was something else, that Gatsby, I tell you. He was real to these people."
I believe this book is a great work of art, one of the great works of fictive art in the 20th century.
It's a book in which I think, like no other book, the American soul recognizes itself. It recognizes its longing across these vast spaces. It recognizes its desire to rise, and it recognizes what happens to it when it adopts the instruments by which it must rise, the inevitably corrupting effect of those instruments.
In some way, he does include so much of what is our curious way of, through our very optimism, destroying everything around us.
Exactly.
And it is so peculiarly an American novel.
É a partir deste ponto que a inocência de Nick Carraway torna-se outra vítima na história de Gatsby.
Did you see any trouble on the road? Yes. Was she killed? Yes. I thought so. I told Daisy I thought so. It's better that the shock should all come at once. She stood it pretty well.
Quando Nick pressiona Gatsby a explicar o atropelamento e morte sem socorro de Myrtle, a verdade é revelada.
Well, I tried to swing the wheel. Was Daisy driving? Yes. But of course I'll say I was.
The ending is the most difficult part of the novel, simply because we don't know what Tom Buchanan really knew. If you look at the critics, half of them think that he knew Daisy was driving the car, and the other half don't believe that he knew that Daisy was driving the car. I think that the novel answers that question, but it answers it in a very roundabout way.
Daisy e Tom estavam na cozinha, um em frente ao outro, com pedaços de frango já frio sobre a mesa e 2 garrafas de cerveja. Ele falava com atenção e, movido pela veemência das palavras, sua mão segurou a dela. Ocasionalmente, ela olhava e balançava a cabeça concordando. Não estavam felizes. Não haviam tocado o frango ou a cerveja. Ao mesmo tempo, não estavam infelizes. Havia uma atmosfera inegável de intimidade permeando a cena. Qualquer um diria que estavam conspirando juntos.
The thing that was shocking to him was that after this stupendous disaster, that in its aftermath, the salvation of the sort of social situation so governed everything that they knew exactly what to do, how to revert to the proprieties. and to what would look all right.
The suggestion there is, at least to me, that Tom knew that Daisy was driving the car and that Gatsby was not driving it. This is very important because when George Wilson comes to Tom Buchanan, believing that it was his car, Tom tells him that it's Gatsby's car and gives him the impression that Gatsby was driving. And if Tom really knows that Gatsby wasn't driving the car, then he really becomes complicit in Gatsby's death. I mean, he pulls the trigger, so to speak, by sending George Wilson on that mission to kill Gatsby.
Wilson vinga-se por sua esposa. Ele mata Gatsby a tiros em sua piscina.
And I think that the novel, in its final summary, its final remarks about what Fitzgerald would call the cruel rich, wanted to turn the screw one more time. What I think he did was to suggest that Tom did know. And to that extent, Tom is as guilty as Wilson in the death of Gatsby.
E com a morte de Gatsby e seu sonho, Fitzgerald devia estar dizendo alguma coisa a mais sobre os Estados Unidos.
I think Tom and Daisy are the least of our troubles in that novel. Tom and Daisy seem to me to be very minor characters indeed, of almost no consequence, as the crime is of almost no consequence, except that it ultimately creates that moral order that suddenly intervenes and puts Gatsby beyond our reach forever. The American dream kills Gatsby, his own aspirations to have it all, to remake his past, to be somebody different. That's what kills Gatsby.
It's an epic novel. It's about Icarus who flew too close to the sun. Icarus was so pleased with his waxen wings that he flew too close to the sun, the wings melted, and down he went. That's why it's so hot in this story. It's the hottest story ever written, maybe. Hot, hot, hot. This is a novel of dangerous summertime. The mythological part of the book is the dream. The real part of the book is what happens to people who have big dreams.
Gatsby ends up being a mythical character because he never loses his belief in possibility, I think. He is disappointed, but not disillusioned, I think. Nick Carraway is disillusioned, and he goes back to the Midwest where he hopes that things will be honest and pure and clean.
Ultimately, although Gatsby may be done in by the American dream, I don't believe that the American dream dies. I believe it goes rolling on out there.
What he was saying about America, and he said it in the very last page of The Great Gatsby, more beautifully than anybody ever did it, is that America is the country of lost innocence.
À medida que a lua subia no céu, as casas insignificantes se apagavam. Até que eu me conscientizei da ilha, aquela que uma vez floresceu perante os olhos dos marinheiros holandeses. Sopro de esperança de novo mundo.
See, the book is a great elegy to the American dream. That's what it really is.
It's one of those experiences that for me has never lost its magic. I still open the book and I still read about Gatsby's shirts and I still see the spot of green on the end of the dock. And there are times when I feel maybe I've deluded myself all these years and it's not possible to get to that spot of green. But then the minute I close the book, I say to myself, no, brace yourself, girl. You're going to get there.
Fitzgerald always lived in dreams, and he accomplished them. He thought that America lived in dreams and would always have nightmares as a result. And that's why he's so touching to us, because he caught the whole conflict at the heart of the American dream, which is that no one can be rich and happy forever and ever, except that his characters act as if they could, you see.
Gatsby acreditava na luz verde, o futuro orgíaco que ano após ano se afastava de nós. Foi uma grande ilusão, mas não importa. No futuro vamos correr, tentar ir mais além no despertar de uma bela manhã. Assim é, barcos contra a correnteza, voltados incessantemente para o passado.
The important word there is against. And the important image there is of a man doing something, purposely navigating. So much of the book has been about unconscious movement by people who don't know what they're doing. And the reason the book ends with that image is that you have a man going against a historical current. And, you know, his muscles are working and his back is moving and he's got his timing right and he's going against the current, ceaselessly.
Quase ao final da vida, Fitzgerald escreveu a sua filha Scotty:
O pouco que realizei tem sido... Neste momento, eu desejaria não olhar para trás, mas como foi dito no final de O Grande Gatsby, esta é minha realidade. De agora em diante, esta é minha prioridade, minha primeira obrigação. Sem isto, eu não sou nada.
Fitzgerald sabia que o Grande Gatsby iria sobreviver.
Scott, we toast you wherever you are. Do you know when I was in college, his grave is not far from where we lived then. We drove over to Rockville with a bottle of wine and poured wine on his grave and read from The Great Gatsby.
No túmulo de Fitzgerald, em Rockville, Maryland, está escrito um epitáfio, a última linha de O Grande Gatsby. Assim foi. Barcos contra a correnteza, voltados incessantemente para o passado.